Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to our global Nimble community. My name is John Ferrara. I'm the CEO of Nimble, and I love these webinars where we can bring in people who inspire us, dear friends like Laura Patterson, to share their expertise with our Nimble audience. You know, I really believe that there is a promise of product and services that Nimble provides, and it is to help you be better, smarter, faster at social sales, marketing, entrepreneurship, growth. These are all areas of influence of Nimble's feature sets. And so we like to bring in thought leaders who are really at the cutting edge of teaching people how to be better at one or more of those activities. And that's why we invited Laura. Laura, let's pull up your bio. So, Laura, you've been working in sales and marketing for quite some time, and we've been friends about that long. But what I love about you is that you really are focused on growth and marketing, and you do it by teaching, by giving your knowledge away in the books and the webinars that you do, so that people then see you as a thought leader. And when they think about how to scale growth and marketing at their company, they not only pick up the phone and call you, but they drag their friends with them. And I'm super excited about your latest book, Fast Track Your Business, which I think we're going to cover here, right?
We're going to talk a little bit about it, but we're really just going to focus on how can you make a plan that will help you grow that is customer-centric and measurable.
Awesome. Awesome. And for those that don't know me, my name is John Ferrara. I've been building relationship management systems since before they were born. So I started a company called Goldmine, which was predates Outlook, believe it or not. There was no Outlook contact manager when we started Goldmine. There was Outlook Express, which was an inbox, and there was no CRM or market automation. And I built it not thinking I was going to go scale a company and build this product, but I struggled. I needed a better relationship manager. And not just one that managed contacts, but managed contacts, activities, messages, and marketing for a whole team, because people don't work in a vacuum. They work as part of a large team. Everybody in that team's touching the customer. And I really believe in team relationship management. And more importantly, relationship management across the whole company. It's not just salespeople that sell at your company. Everybody in the company is involved with the constituency around your business. And that's why you need a team relationship manager. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead to your first slide, Laura. And I just want to remind everybody to put questions in the question box. We will be compiling those in the background. And Laura, if you want me to kibitz on anything, you let me know. But I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, John. And yes, let's make it a conversation. There is a lot of ground we want to cover. And I remember Goldmine well. I was a customer of Goldmine, and thank you for that, because at the time, that's what we had available to us, and it worked really well. And thank you for Nimble, because we love Nimble. Okay, so with that, and I'm so excited to be here. We've been around since 1999. We work predominantly in the B2B space, where the pillars of our company are all around strategy, using data to derive really good insights and make better decisions, process, measurability, and customer centricity to succeed at growing an organization. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And today I'd like to really focus on three things: how you make sure a plan answers really critical business questions that will help you find, keep, and grow the value of customers; how you can create what we call direct line of sight between the work we do, particularly in marketing, which is our primary growth engine for every organization. We do a lot of things in marketing that we call activities, whether that's social media, email campaigns, the website and SEO. I mean, it's a very events like webinars, and the money we spend on those things or invest on behalf of the company to produce business results. And it's really important to be able to show the relationship between all of that work and results. And lastly, how do you do that with logic chains? So that's a intellectual property of ours is metrics logic chains, but I'm going to show you what they are and how they work. We have a special offer for Nimble customers between now and midnight Friday night. So I'll share that at the end of the webinar. So here's the thing that we know from lots of research. We've been doing research with members of the leadership team, that's CEOs, CFOs, COOs, presidents, chief growth officers, chief revenue officers, chief customer officers ever since 2001, for a very long time. And what we know is that there are three things they expect of their marketing function and people. And to John, to your earlier point about work groups, oftentimes those are today cross-functional. So you've got customer-facing people working together, people that are bringing product to market or services to market, working with those teams. So they expect those teams, especially the marketers, to deliver and improve on finding, keeping, and growing. And this really takes using data better in order to make decisions about strategy, segmentation, what to offer, and improve conversion rates. And the focus of every organization should be the customer. We're going to spend some time talking about that, because even though we talk about customer journey mapping and personas and messaging and message maps and channels and touch points and content, they need to be within the context of the customer. So we'll spend some time on that. And lastly, they expect us to be more accountable, have better measures, better measurement, and better reporting. So those are the three things that the leadership team expects of marketing: data-driven decisions, customer centricity, and accountability. So how do you succeed in delivering that? I want to start by saying one thing that's really important to all of us that lead businesses, like John and I do, and those that help us with our businesses. And we all want to make money. We have revenue targets. But as marketers and salespeople, but really as marketers especially, we don't market to buckets of revenue. There is no bucket of revenue, right? We don't make offers to buckets of revenue. We don't write content to buckets of revenue. We follow Peter Drucker's philosophy that we market to people. And from his famous line, his famous quote is, "The purpose of business is to create a customer." And customers are people. And so we're going to focus today on how do we be more customer-centric in the way we create a plan. So the four things that we need to know, and we're going to go through each one of these. And the first thing is, who is the market or customer, and what is the problem or opportunity they have? How big is it, and where do we have the best opportunities to access those and take advantage of those? And that is what allows us to focus on those prospects that are most likely to buy. And in order to do this well and succeed, we have to understand segmentation, because back to, we don't market to buckets of revenue, but we do market to customer segments. And I love this comic strip. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Snuffy Smith. It's a very old comic strip. And if you know anything about Snuffy Smith, Snuffy has a best friend, Lukey, and they do several things together, one of which is fishing. And this particular comic strip came out a number of years ago, and Lukey is saying to Snuffy, "That's a lot of bait, Snuffy." And Snuffy says, "Today I'm prepared. Some of the fish bite better on worms, some of them seem to prefer crawlers, and some really go for the wigglers. I figured I'd put out a buffet and see what happens." When we do not do segmentation, we go after our customers with a buffet. When we do segmentation, we can be way more focused, and we know, in this case, what fish prefer what bait. And so segmentation is where we need to start. It's oftentimes the missing piece in what we call the customer obsession puzzle, which is from Laurie Wisdo, who is at Forrester. So, as you know, probably from doing jigsaw puzzles, before you start the puzzle, you separate the pieces into common features. And that's what we do in segmentation. We're looking for the commonality across different types of customers. And before you target your customers, you separate them into these common characteristics. And we have learned that 29% of B2B marketers say that linking their insights to specific segments is really challenging for them. And it's really a big challenge when it comes to measurement. So this will be something that we will talk about shortly. I have a new puppy. I haven't had a chance to tell John about my new puppy, Riley, who is a toy Aussie. He's just turned 9 months old. He's about 9.5 pounds. So when I was thinking about different segments, I came across and have been looking at various different kinds of dog food, as you can imagine, and different products for different segments. Obviously, dogs don't buy. I am the buyer. So there you have all these different Purinas out there. Riley is on Purina Pro Plan. He just made the transition from puppy to adult food. And you can see all the different choices there are of Purina. It's actually overwhelming when you go to the store and go down the aisle and try to figure out the best one for your dog. Thank goodness our vet recommended the Pro Plan. So these are all the different things and how the different segments that they look for and how they actually position each of those products to different segments. So my question to all of you would be, as you think about your products and your services, have you really given thought to how they are positioned for different segments? That's a really important thing to be able to do. And there's lots of ways you can do segmentation. You can do it geographically, and that's very common in the B2B world, by region or climate or market size. They do it demographically, by age or gender or income or revenue or life cycle. Psychographic is another way for those of you in the B2C world, but it still works in B2B. This is around motivations to buy, which is something that's very important when you're building out personas. Benefits, another way to do segmentation, where you organize your prospects and your customer segments by the benefits they are seeking. Usage rates, those that use more frequently than others. And then for business to business, needs-based segmentation, behavior-based segmentation is really important. So there's lots of ways to do it, and there's not only one way. You can mix and match these. The key is to have a methodology or an approach that you're going to use consistently. Otherwise, you just end up constantly redoing your segmentation, and that is not a successful way to grow.
Laura, I had a question on that segmentation part. Can you go back to the previous slide?
Absolutely.
I didn't see segmenting on features used, but you could think about that as the benefit that they get or the needs. But would that be something that you might consider segmenting on?
So they use features to achieve some kind of result. So that would either be a benefit or a need. And then there are probably certain features that are used more than others, and that could be under usage rate. But
awesome.
people buy something because it solves a problem or helps them achieve an opportunity. And the features are what enable them to do that. So it's really more of a benefits-oriented versus feature-oriented, and our recommendation would be better.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
That was a good question. All right, so segmentation, what it really does for us, it allows us to think about how we're going to set up our plan. Because when most companies create marketing plans, for example, or growth plans or sales plans, it's very helpful to think about the specific segments. And if you're really small, you can think about which segments you need to find, which existing customers you need to keep, and which existing customer segments you want to grow. And then you can build better KPIs, that is key performance indicators and measures around those segments. And this, when you have segments and you know what those targets are, now you can be much more specific in what you're going to do to connect with, engage with, and move those customers in those segments forward in their buying journey. So how do you select the right segment? And you're looking for those common characteristics that best fit your offer, that is your product, your service, or combination, your price, your functionality, all of those kinds of questions. And what you're looking for is it going to be a substantial enough market? Because you're going to spend money, even if it's time is money, or energy. So you want it to be big enough to warrant the effort. You want it to be identifiable. Can you identify these people? Can you find them? You want it to be accessible. Do you have a way to access the market? Either through, it could be your channel, it could be the fact that you already have existing customers in that space, but how will you gain access and overcome the competition? And then responsiveness. Will they be responsive to the messaging, to your value prop? to how you're positioned. So these are things you're going to need to understand. And all of this information takes good data so that you can answer these kinds of questions. And for many of our smaller and medium-sized companies, their challenge isn't so much data, it's actually being able to analyze that data quickly and then identify the patterns in that data to get an insight from it and know what decision to make as a result. So that's oftentimes the biggest challenge. And that leads me to our second question, which is the people, who. So this is who. Who has the problem? Who influences the decision? Who decides to make the purchase? And many organizations often confuse three things or use three things interchangeably. So I wanted to spend just a quick moment on roles, profiles, and personas. And when we're just starting out and we don't have a lot of data or we don't have a lot of time, we might go for roles. You know, a role in an organization might be a CFO. A role in an organization might be the CTO. A role in the organization might be the CRO or the sales manager or the sales director or the brand marketing director or whomever it might be. And then as we get more proficient, we might build out profiles. And then when we have better data, we can build out personas. And we're going to talk about those. Well, let me talk about them real quickly. So think about a role at like a CFO. And in that role, there will be a profile. And that profile will include information about what's, their average, how long they're typically in their job, what kind of education they might have, what their general responsibilities might be, who they typically might report to, things along those lines. And you will have a profile potentially for every role that you might be marketing and selling to. Personas take that one level deeper. So imagine that you are selling to a CFO. There might be a CFO that persona is the strategic CFO. And this might be the CFO who sort of plays a critical role with the CEO in helping them create the strategy, the vision for the company, and even might be responsible for helping achieve that. Whereas another CFO might be just very focused on being the fiscally responsible CFO, all about making sure the company stays within the right financial parameters, very fiscally oriented. And then there might be a risk management CFO, make sure that you don't go outside the lines on regulation or compliance or other things that audits, other ways that might put the company at risk. And each of those profiles would then, you'd have different messaging for, and different potentially marketing assets for and sales assets for. And so that's how roles, profiles, and personas come to life in your organization, is through the assets that you create, how you build out your website, the way that you put together your sales enablement tools, all of those things, maybe even the kinds of webinars you hold, the kinds of case studies you create, all of that would have implications based on roles, profiles, and personas. Each of these people goes through a buying journey. And so how they buy and what channels and touch points they prefer is the third thing you need to know. So before you can even build your plan, right, we've already said you got to know these three things. What is that journey? So here's an example. There's a person going through this journey, and this journey says, look, the first way they made contact maybe is through social media or maybe a LinkedIn display ad. Then they attended maybe an industry event in your industry and went to one of your session presentations, maybe came by your booth, and then eventually jumped over and downloaded a white paper from your website. Maybe they left you a business card at the booth or stopped by after the session and gave you a business card, and then maybe at the website which is gated, the white paper, you got more information, maybe their LinkedIn URL, and now you know more about them. You add them to your email data or to your database, to your CRM system like Nimble, and you have a newsletter, and now you begin to bring them in and engage them into your community. Now you're making connection with them, and maybe they want to do an online demo to see your product. I know that Nimble does that, and I think those are wonderful demos that the team does. And then maybe that leads to them either being on the phone with you or chat because they have some questions. And then maybe they join a particular kind of webinar where a customer is telling a story, and then that leads to eventually wanting information. Maybe it's a a face-to-face appointment and an RFP, and so forth and so on. Understanding that journey, the channels and the touch points, and the who is going through them is very important to how you set up your plan. Lastly, the last thing you need to have and know is why they should buy from you versus whatever their alternatives are. And sometimes the alternative is just doing whatever they've been doing. So this is where your value proposition and your positioning is very important. Being able to differentiate yourself from the competition, if that is an actual real competitor specifically in your space. As we all know, there are many CRM alternatives out there, so there's lots of competition there. Some are homegrown, some you can buy off the shelf. And then there's the competition again of people not even in your space that might be offering something. And then lastly is, what is your message map? So those are some things you need to have that will help you be successful. Those are the 4 things you need to know. And once you know them, and of course, all of them take data to get the answers. And once you know the answers to those questions, you can begin planning. So plans are nothing, planning is everything is a quote from Dwight D. Eisenhower, for those of you who might remember, one of our presidents. And what you want is a plan that will give you direct line of sight. This is a very important thing. So we see hundreds of plans every year, and they come in various formats. Most often they come in PowerPoint. And the challenge with PowerPoint is that you cannot create direct line of sight between the things you're going to do and the outcomes that the company is trying to achieve. It's very hard because that PowerPoint is a presentation tool like we're using today, not a planning tool. So as a result, most of the time, those plans lack any kind of structure. We have some people who submit plans in Excel. Typically, that is very calendar oriented with some measures and some budget associated around the activities that they're going to do, and they might be organized under objectives. Sometimes we get full on plans in Word, and short or long versions of Word. So you need a planning framework, and I'm going to show you an example of one. We have one that's patented. I'm not trying to sell that to you today. Just want you to know that we ended up creating our own, just like John ended up creating Nimble, because there wasn't anything else out there at the time. But you want a framework, that identifies metrics that will impact your organization's performance and build on your strengths, links the work that you are doing, whether that's your sales or your customer success organization or your marketing organization, back to business results and outcomes. Will create a culture of accountability, so you want it to be able to something to help you be measurable. Broadens your focus beyond just supporting the sales function. That's very important for marketing and customer success, that they are producing results beyond just sales support, and measures the value, impact, and contribution of your work group or your function, as well as the ROI. So this is an example of how you need to have line of sight. So you have an outcome. An outcome is something that takes 2 or more functions of your organization to achieve. It needs to be customer-centric in the way it is framed, and it needs to be measurable, tied to one of those segments. And it's what your organization is going to be able to open up a case of Dom Perignon at the end of the year in order to declare success, for example. Underneath that, you'll have objectives, underneath that, strategies and programs, then tactics, then activities. Oftentimes, what we see in plans is down at the tactics and activities level. Sometimes those are tied to programs, sometimes those are tied to objectives, but they're all just sort of, again, inside of PowerPoint, not necessarily connected to each other. You want to be able to show that relationship directly, right? And that's going to become very important when you set up your measures. So the very first stop in any growth plan is outcomes. What is success for your organization? It could be how many net new customers, what they're going to buy. It could be how many existing customers are going to continue to buy, and what is it they're going to buy from you, and which ones of those customers can you grow? Can you increase the share of wallet? That is the amount of products and services that particular customer is buying from you. Can you increase the footprint inside that customer base? So perhaps you're selling to one business unit. Can you grow into another business unit? These are all the kinds of things you would be thinking about in terms of outcomes. Outcomes are better indicators of your strategic effectiveness. If you focus on those, they make sure that your plan is tied to what the organization feels is most important. It demonstrates your accountability, and it provides a way to ensure a quality process. All right, I want to give you an example with my friend Joe. This is not Joe's picture, but Joe looks a lot like this. Joe is a friend of mine that we are in the same running group, and we meet on Wednesday mornings and to run at the track. And one day, and Joe's a pharmaceutical rep. He spends a lot of time, as you can imagine, on the plane. And one day at the track, Joe says to me, "How many times a week do you run?" That's his question. And he says, an answer to that question, "I run 5 times a week." So I know this isn't very interactive, but I want you to think about the fact that I then asked Joe a question. Think in your chat for a moment. What do you think is the question that I asked him? And if you answered, I asked him why, you had the right answer. Why? Why is Joe running? Is Joe running because he wants to drop 50 pounds by the end of the year? Is Joe running because he wants to beat his best time in his next 5K? 2 extremely different outcomes. And as a result, very different measures and very different strategies and very different tactics and activities. Because if Joe is just wanting to drop 50 pounds, it's not really about running. It's the measure is really about calories. Calories in, calories out, 3,500 calories per pound. If Joe misses a run one day, he can do something else to make up for that. He can reduce what he eats. He can, if he doesn't get a run in that night, he could go to the pool. He can do a number of things. He can double up later in the week. All kinds of things Joe can do if it's just calories. But if it's about meeting Joe's best 5K in under 28 minutes, now his metric of success is pace. Totally different. And it's all about running. It's not like he can skip those workouts, and it's not like he has to really worry about calories. What he's got to really focus on is his pace. What can he do? So all of his strategies are going to be around that. It's not like he can just say, "Oh, today I'm not going to run. I'm going to ride my bike for my workout." No, you can't do that. You can do that if we're dropping 20 pounds. So you see how valuable it is to have the outcome as the starting point of your plan. So outcomes first. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200, as we say in the game of Monopoly, until you know what the outcome's for. And a good outcome might be something like X number of existing customers are going to adopt Y new service within 2 quarters of its release, resulting in some amount of revenue. Not that we don't want to pay attention to revenue. We do want revenue there, but now we're very clear what this outcome is. And if you're in marketing, if you're in sales, if you're in customer success, you understand what winning means, right? Now, if you, for example, this is what you might look like. Here is 2 outcomes. One is around 7 existing customers. One is around 15 new direct mid-market customers in 3 verticals. It's very, very clear what the outcomes are. And the marketing folks in this hypothetical example now know what they need to do. They understand what their objectives are. So they've set up very specific objectives. You know, they got chalk talk meetings with 40 existing and or previous customer conversations in order to convert some number of those to statements of work that are going to produce some number of engagements, with the target being 7. Now you can envision what those programs are going to be like, what the strategy is going to be like, what the tactics and activities might be. Now that we know what the objective is, that is going to move the needle on these existing customers. Same thing under direct. So think about your plan and how specific they are. Is it customer-centric? Is it measurable? Is it clear what it is your function, your work group is going to do to move the needle on the outcome? So the purpose.
Laura, can we go back to that slide?
Sure.
Is the outcome the blue ones?
Yes, the outcome is always at the top. And in this case, the objective is the green.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. Okay, Phil Kotler. If you haven't ever read a book on Phil Kotler and you're in marketing, I highly encourage you to pick up one of his books. One of my favorites is the one he wrote in 1999, which is Phil Kotler on Marketing. And he essentially says the purpose of marketing is to find, keep, and grow the value of customers. By the way, he wasn't really the first person to say that. If you are familiar with Ted Levitt, he also said that many years ago, but essentially both of them are reiterating the same thing. That is our job in marketing: find, keep, and grow. So if the very minimum, no matter what size your company is, find, keep, and grow can always be the beginning of your outcomes and your marketing objectives. If you're a brand new startup, it's all about find, right? But even when you find them, there's still someone who has to be able to keep them. There's nothing worse than churn, right? You don't want people coming in the front door just to walk out the back door, because you need those customers to stay in order to get good customer case studies, customer stories, customer referrals, good customer reviews, all the things that you need. So keeping is really important. Retention is still a critical part of the puzzle. So customer-centric measurable objectives is the very next thing that your team needs to think about. Whether you're in sales, customer success, product development, or R&D, marketing, it's how is your team or you going to impact or contribute to the outcome? And of course, you want it to be realistic. You want it to be measurable. You want it to be time specific, all the things you've learned about SMART in terms of SMART objectives. But this is the critical link. This is the link, and that's why it's so important to get it framed properly between the outcome and everything you're going to do. So, for example, increase the sales team ability to engage with prospects regarding Y service by X% 30 days prior to the launch, resulting in some number of customers adopting this new service. That is an example of what might be an objective. Very, very specific, very clear, which customers, what service, by how much, and when, right? So once you have the objective, now you can start thinking about strategy that you're going to need, more data. You're going to need more data, because now that you know that, what are you going to do? Get back to that customer journey. What are the things you need to do to move that customer through the buying journey and create a good experience for them to keep them and to grow their value? And then accountability. So let's go through a little bit here. Strategy, programs, tactics, and activities are the things that come in your plan next in that order. In that order. It's very important. A lot of people are thinking activities first. I cannot tell you how many times I'm having a conversation with someone and they tell me the things they're going to do. We're going to go to these 5 trade shows in the next 6 months. Why? Right? Because we need to meet more people and we want to get more people in our database. Why? Right? So always be answering that why question so you can get to the outcome. How do you even know those are the right places to go? So I'll tell you a real quick personal story. I joined Motorola in '82 in the microcontroller business, and they had already identified several events that they were going to be going to. And those events were NorthCon, WestCon, SemiCon. These were all semiconductor trade shows where you basically were showing your semiconductor, your product, in this case microcontrollers, to engineers, but those engineers were other people in the semiconductor industry. Well, we're not selling to other people in the semiconductor industry. We're selling to people who are, needing microcontrollers for automotive applications, for communications applications, for consumer electronics products, for transportation and logistics products, for all of these other reasons. So one of the things I started doing is asking the question, why aren't we going to SAE, which is an automotive engineering trade show where all the engineers in the automotive industry who are working on their future design plans are going to be, right? That would be, stop thinking about the activity, understand what the outcome is. Then you can figure out what are the right activities. So think about that. Okay, lastly, for those of us on the marketing front, but this is true for sales, customer success, and product, understand what's working and what is your value. So that needs to be measurable. And the ROI measurement problem, I want to talk about this for just a moment. Everyone always comes back to me and says, ROI, 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 right? How do we show ROI? And I just want you to know that it isn't so much about ROI as it is about value. ROI is a very specific financial measure, and I'm not suggesting that we don't use it, but it's way more important to be able to show and demonstrate how we are contributing to the success of the outcome and the business and how we are adding value. And if we can do that, that will be better. So the C-suite scorecard which was developed and fielded by the CMO Council, said business executives are looking for the following improvements in skills, proficiency, and capability inside marketing organizations. They want us to be able to be more adaptive. Remember, we talked about this early on. So decision-making based on good data. So that was one of the things that we talked about right on the very first slide. And the ability to make a business case for the investment. And it isn't necessarily ROI. It's about that contribution, about that impact to the business. So bad measures can be worse than none at all. Too many measures can impede progress. And I cannot emphasize this too much. So many people we work with have so many things they're measuring, and there's no rhyme or reason to what they're measuring other than they can get the measure. They have inappropriate measures that encourage lots of non-productive activities. They have ambiguous metrics that are open to interpretation. They set targets too low, and they're not necessarily consistent with the strategy. And there's oftentimes a disconnect between what the function is measuring and the business result that's trying to be achieved. So I'm going to share a tale of two leaders. This happens to be two CMOs, both in what I would call mid-market companies, both of them in technology companies. We've had an opportunity to work with both of these. And very recently, one of these CMOs lost their job. And I was having a conversation with actually the CEO and CFO of both of these organizations. And I asked them about their CMOs. And one of the things that was said about the one particular CMO is it's not a lack of measures. We have so many measures, but we don't understand the how this person is making a difference to the business. So we are measuring a lot of things and we're reporting on a lot of measures, but I can't connect those measures to the business. And I think that's an important message for everyone, for all of us. Doesn't matter who we are, for all of us. So I want to talk about the person on the left. What were their measures? He tracked trial and inquiry rates. He measured adoption and win rates. He focused on category growth and referral rates, and he tracked pipeline contribution. And our CMO on the right tracked everything web, you know, which pages they went to, how long they were there, how many, what was the traffic, everything social, everything email, all kinds of media coverage and share of voice, awareness and sentiment, lead ROI, and they reported on the commitment to budget and expenses, right? What they said in terms of, we said we would deliver it on this time, and we said we would deliver it at this budget. So you look at those measures and you tell me, which of these measures do you think were much more closely tied to the business? If you said the person on the left, you would be right, right? Because you can see that those are measures. It doesn't mean that the person on the left, the CMO on the left, didn't look at these measures that are on the right. They did, but that's not what was important to the business. And that person understood that they needed to have measures that showed the impact, value, and contribution of the work of marketing to the business. All right, so connect your plan and measures to what your organization values. And this takes what we call metrics chains. This is the last thing we're going to talk about. And it is really your secret weapon, metrics logic chains. Again, this is our intellectual capital, but I want to share it with you and help you understand what it is. In order to do this, you're really going to have to start with the outcomes. It cannot be based on revenue, profit, or sales, but rather the bet your company is going to make in terms of the customers you're going to acquire, the customers you're going to keep, the customers you're going to grow. And that's not the only outcomes a company might have. There may be other outcomes related that have nothing to do with marketing and sales or customer success or product. Might have to do with operations, might have to do with talent management. Those are important outcomes. I'm speaking specifically to growth right now and the people that drive growth and move the revenue needle. So what does your leadership team need from your team to do or in order to contribute or impact? What are the things they expect you to do? And how will they know you did it? So I'm going to repeat these three questions. If you're not sure what the outcomes are in your organization, ask, right? Ask them. What is it that you expect the company to achieve by the end of whatever the time horizon is in order to declare success, other than revenue, profit, and sales? Which customers, what products, what geographies? Questions like that. The next question is, how do you expect us, what is it you expect us to do to help move the needle or achieve those? And how will you know that we did? Now you know your objectives, and you also know how you're going to be measured, right? When you do that, now you can form logic chains. And there is an art and a science to logic chains. They take what we call both logic and math. Logic is about clarifying. It's helping you understand the relationships. Math is about quantifying, all right? And these chains create the connective tissue between the things you're going to do, all the things you're going to do in marketing, whether that's new content or events or social media or promotional campaigns, email campaigns, and the results you're going to get. And they are the foundation of every measurable plan. So imagine you have an outcome, an objective, a program, a tactic, and your activities. You're going to need other measures besides those that come from this plan. You're going to need some measures around your, how efficient or productive you are, something around your budget, and things that keeps the train on the track, so to speak. But the majority of showing how you're making a difference to the business, that comes from within your plan that you just created. So just to give you an example, imagine that the business outcome is market share. This company wants to grow their market share. And in order to do that, they need new orders from a particular set for a particular product in a particular market from a particular set of customers, and they need to increase that by some amount by the end of their fiscal year. And in order to get this market share, that product has to get increased adoption rate. So they have to accelerate adoption. And accelerate adoption, because product adoption is going to be their primary metric. In this case, it's going to be a KPI for the marketing organization, is going to have to do with trial rates. So getting X number of targeted customers to engage in trials. They're going to build a program. The program, they're calling it Taking It to the Streets. Most programs or campaigns have a name. I'm sure your programs have names. And they're going to do something very specific in order to get these customers to do trials. And it's going to have to do with using ambassadors from their existing customer base in this particular market, using this product. And then they're going to have these tactics around tell your story. So webcasts, webinars, podcasts, meetings, site meetings, storyline submissions, all kinds of things, and some measures. So now you can see the relationship in the plan. So think about your plan. Can you build this kind of a chain from your existing plan? If you can, that's awesome. If you can't, this is a place to start. Do you have these kinds of measures around customer sets in your plan? If not, that's the place to start. Then you want to be sure that you have performance targets. Every link in your chain needs a performance target. And you can do ranges. Don't set yourself up to fail. Don't say you're going to do 50 as something and you only get to 49. Then it's a failure. Pick a range. Ranges are good, but they are your stake in the ground. And where will you determine what your stake in the ground comes from? From your data, from historical information. What have you done in the past? Where were you successful? Can you stretch that? Could you do better than that? The value of performance targets is they do begin to help you have conversations about priorities. They help define an agreed upon direction. They bring focus to the work you're doing. They help you assess effectiveness better. Also, you can see if you need to make a course adjustment. You're so far away from the number, what should we be doing? Do we need to make changes tactics and activities? Is it just not going to work? Should we dump the whole effort, the whole program? Should we change programs? What should we do? And it improves alignment. That's the value of performance targets. So here's an example of a plan again that we've kind of been talking about. You can sort of see at the top where those 7 existing and 15 different. And you can see the marketing objectives were in the green, engage with existing, new direct. And now you can see what those strategies were, what those product programs were, some activities and tactics. So the Chalk Talks came under this notion of a high touch strategy. They wanted to get, very one-on-one, high-touch conversations with these existing customers. They used Chalk Talks to do it. They set it up around a tactic around It's Just Lunch, doing these Chalk Talks over lunch where they brought lunch in. And, they did it at restaurants that people wanted to go to. So they got them out of the office where they would be less likely to be disrupted or interrupted or taken away from the moment. So all different kinds of things they did. And you can see not only did they do the restaurant, you can see all the activities that were below that. And those things have money associated with them. Okay, so I'm getting close to wrapping it up. I want to have time to answer questions. I would always recommend starting with 3 to 5 business outcomes. That's a pretty good number for most any size organization. Understand this continuum of measures. So there is a continuum of measures. You can find some of that on our website if you need me to. I can provide a link to where you can take a look at the continuum. And the continuum looks at from activity to leading indicator types of measures. And you want those measures to be related to each other when you build out the chain. Take stock of the current state of your measures and move up. Most of the time when we go through an exercise with customers around their measures, they typically fall in either activity or output. Very struggling, sometimes within operational, but for the most part, they're a hodgepodge or a smorgasbord of measures. Many times they're pulling them from their systems. And remember, the dashboard in your systems is really just the data inside that platform. That's all it is the data inside that platform. Probably need to think beyond that when you're building out your chain. Use a mapping process to make sure your business outcomes, your objectives, your targets, and your metrics are connected. Close the gaps in the chains. If you see that you don't have something in a link in the chain, what should it be? Make allies with the data owners. You may not own all the data that you need. Maybe some of that data is in finance. Maybe some of that data is in product. Maybe some of that data is somewhere in an operational group. So make allies with data owners and stakeholders so that you can get the data that you need. Revise how you report. Think about reporting in terms of not just talking about what you're doing, but talking about how it's moving the needle on the outcome. What kind of progress have you made against the performance targets you set and the outcome that the company is trying to achieve? Identify systems and tools that you need to support performance management, whether that's an application and platform like Nimble and others. Up-level your skills. We're in a really interesting environment with AI and machine learning and all the different kinds of data visualization tools. And it's just a lot for all of us to keep up with. So up-level your skills where you need to and work on building a performance-driven culture. Don't be afraid of setting performance targets and trying to work to them. Okay, so I would like to take a moment. I have always found that people do best in webinars like this if they have a moment to write down what they learned or take away from today. So take a moment and think to yourself, what's one thing that you took from this conversation and that you think would be helpful to you that you would be willing to try and begin to implement? So just write that down. Take one moment to write that down. You don't need to share it. You don't need to make it public. It's just for you. But give that some thought. We're only in mid-February. We still have plenty of time to make a difference for this year, plenty of time to impact the plans that we have. So what's one thing that you learned or one thing that you took away from today that you would want to do as a next step? Okay. We do have a special for the Nimble folks, and we have a QR code here. We have a workbook. So one of the requests we've had, and we try to listen to our customers, or those that attend our workshops, have said to us, it would be great if you could make some workbooks from these workshops that we could do, take back to the ranch, so to speak, here in Texas, and work with our team. So we have a workbook called Create a Customer-Centric Growth Plan. You can buy it online, and it's between now and midnight, Friday night, the 17th, it's 30% off all our workbooks for all Nimble people. All right, so when you go to the store or you go to this QR, you can find that one, and you can find a store on our site under Shop, and you can find all the interactive workbooks. Just until February 17th, basically 11:59 p.m. Okay, John, you were so nice to mention Circle of Traction and Fast Track Your Business. So a lot of what I've taken you through here, segmentation, positioning, strategy, outcomes, we talk about in our Circle of Traction, which is a framework we use, and which is we walk you through that in our book, Fast Track Your Business. And you can get Fast Track Your Business in every format, printed, ebook, Audible, from Amazon, as well as other bookstores and Barnes & Noble for printed copies. So if you thought that you'd like to learn more and you want to dig in, this will be a great way to dig in. Feel free to reach out to me if you would like. There's all different ways that you can connect with me: LinkedIn, Twitter, obviously by email, and watch out for our Smart Business blog. Many of these topics we talk about all the time on our blog, in our podcast, and on our LinkedIn. And with that, I would like to turn it back over to John and team for questions and comments.
Well, first off, Laura, thank you for sharing your wisdom on how to build a growth marketing plan. I think that the detail that you went into really made me think about a number of different areas, and one of them is the segmentation. In your book, Fast Track Your Business, do you get into how much time do you spend on segmentation and positioning?
Yes, we do, and that is such a major part of the work that we do with our customers, that we have slews of articles, free articles on our website on segmentation and building segmentation models. And that's one of our very popular workshops. And so we even have a workbook on that. And it too is on sale on how to build a segmentation model. And it's very, very detailed.
I think that proper segmentation and then positioning is critical to helping you to stand out and attract buyers that are a really great fit for your products that you're building. Okay, so if there are any more questions, now is a good time to get them in. I know we covered a lot of ground, but making a plan is a pretty big undertaking. Yes, yeah, and I think a lot of marketing departments run on autopilot, and I think also one of the big things I hear from people is, how do you align the company with the marketing plan? Because if the whole company isn't aligned with the positioning and the segment that you're going after and the whole process, how do you align a company, and how much of the company do you need to align in order to achieve success in growth?
That's a great question. So starting with outcomes is a wonderful way to get alignment, right? Because when outcomes are those things that are affected by two or more functions, that automatically creates alignment. And so for everyone in the organization needs to know what the outcomes are. Everyone. Because when you come to work in the morning, your job is to affect those outcomes. That's your job every day. That's what we're all here to do. So outcomes are the way you align. You don't align the company to the marketing plan. You align the marketing plan to the outcomes. And if you align the marketing plan and the sales plan and the customer success plan and the product plan and the operational plan, if all those things are aligned to the outcomes, the organization will be aligned.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go to the last slide. And I do encourage you to all connect with Laura and connect with her on whatever channel best fits you. Reach out to me and connect with me. Let me know how I can help your organization grow. You can find me on all the various social sites or use my email, john@nimble.com. I want to thank the Nimble marketing team for putting this amazing webinar together. Laura, I want to thank you for taking the time to get up on your, soapbox and to share your wisdom with us. It's always a pleasure to connect with you, and I learned a few things. I did some screenshots, and I'm going to talk with my marketing department about some of our methodologies that we use for growth at Nimble as well. And I want to thank the audience for coming today and spending your valuable time with us. Do you have any final words for us, Laura?
I just want to say thank you to everyone who did come today, and I do hope everyone took away at least one good idea. And John and team, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You bet. We're going to be sending a copy of the recording out to all attendees and registrants. And with that, make it an amazing week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, y'all. Are you also